Welcome to Tiny Game Chronicles episode 33. My name is Marcus, and here with my good friend Michael. Every other week, we discuss games that are quick plays, but epic journeys. It is good to see you again today, Michael. We've been doing a lot of these lately. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, thank you, Marcus. I'm really excited to talk about this game. It's late in the afternoon here. We want to make sure that over the Christmas season, over the festive holiday season, we keep pushing out some content, and so that's why we're pushing it. So by the time you'll be hearing this episode, I guess Christmas will be over.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I think this one's dropping on New Year's Day. So
Yes.
Happy New Year to everybody out there.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Before we get started talking about our game, Michael,
Yes.
I do have a question for you.
As
And this
you
is a
always
question
do.
really just for you, because I don't really have
Okay.
much to add here. Do you have any Berlin memories?
I actually do.
I figured you might. It's just down the road. Yeah.
Well, it's about a 5-hour train ride
Yeah.
from where we live. But I did visit Berlin just because it is an exciting city. There's a lot of creative energy in Berlin, and I obviously went to visit the place Checkpoint Charlie. You know, where the wall used to be. There are some remnants of the wall still there. There is a big difference between East and West Berlin with regards to just the not just the look and feel and the architecture, but also just the spirit. It's a place, Marcus, where a lot of artists go and want to kind of record. I remember U2, Depeche Mode, Queen used to go there regularly when they were active to record. It is a city with a real vibe, and it's a city of extremes. And so I'm really excited to talk about this game because it is a very, very multicultural city. And I think that if we reflect historically what Berlin has gone through in these last 100 or so years, it is definitely a city that has left a lot of impact behind. So, yeah.
Did
if
you
I was
ever go? Sorry, Michael. Did you
Yes.
ever go prior to the wall coming down? Like when it was still separated between East and West?
No, I didn't. But I used to write a lot because I was, as I said, I was living on other continents, South Africa, South America. But I had family in Germany, and I always needed to write West Germany, right?
Right.
As part of the history. And I think the wall came down in 1989, and then obviously a lot of things changed. And it also gave me a start with my training when I arrived in Germany, because of the loss. A lot of the East Germans couldn't speak English; they could speak Russian, and they could speak
Right.
German, but no
Right.
English, because English wasn't taught there. And so my kind of finding my feet was that I was able to grab a lot of clients in managerial positions, but who couldn't speak English. So, and that's basically the first few years how I started earning my living. And then I got a lot of info, and there's still quite a lot of division between East and West. So West Germans refer to people having lived in East Germany as Ossis. Yeah. So
Okay.
people from the East. And there is a different accent. There was definitely a different mindset. And funnily enough, that also there was a very different political sentiment, right? So East Germany used to be very socialist related, if that kind of makes sense from the history, and now that is changing. So they're becoming way more kind of right wing orientated than before, and that's obviously some scary developments, right? That's why I also think that this is an important game.
Well, thank
Too
you
much
for that.
information.
No, not at all. I find it really interesting, and it's really cool to have your perspective on it. As I maybe suggested, I haven't never been to Berlin. I have been to Germany, more on your side, on the western part of Germany.
Yeah.
We, did a little bit of a tour kind of as we were going around France and through the Black Forest and up
Yeah,
through
that's beautiful.
Cologne. Yeah, but never been kind of as far east as Berlin. So
That's Berlin. I think if you are creative and you are, I don't know, in your mid-20s to early 30s, Berlin has an awesome nightlife, a very big club scene. If you are an artist in any way, it's definitely the city to pick up on a lot of impulses and to unfold yourself as an artist. I'm way north of that, unfortunately, in my age, so Berlin wouldn't be suitable at this stage. So I needed it a little bit quieter. But definitely, if you're young, it's worth a visit by all means. Yeah.
very cool. Very cool. Well, before we get into talking about our game this episode, the Berlin Apartment, just wanted to mention that our previous episode for the game, Michael,
Yes.
we both really liked this game.
Yes.
It took you a little bit longer to get through it than it did me, but excellent. And as we said on the episode, a true master class at design.
Yeah, and it's a game that we it landed on both of our lists with regards to our games of
That's
the
right.
year. Yeah,
Yes.
so in your top 5 and in my honorable mentions. So it's definitely worth a game spending your time with. And yeah, let's see. There are more games from the same developer, so I'm sure that we'll be visiting the one or other game that they developed this year in 2026, Marcus.
That's right. That's right. Okay, Michael, let's begin our discussion about the Berlin Apartment.
Mm-hmm.
The Berlin Apartment released on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox on November 17th, 2025. It was developed, there's a little bit of I think there are multiple teams working on it, but according to the Steam page, it was developed by BTF, a German developer. But there are some other teams that were involved in this. You could see it, as I was rolling credits. I was like, man, there's a lot more developers here than I was first led to believe.
So BTF, it's they're called Bild- und Tonfabrik. It's a German name. It's all in one word. Bild, picture, und and Ton, tone, so sound.
Okay.
Factory, Fabrik.
Yes.
But today they're called, and you'll also see this in the video, Blue Backpack.
Okay.
So you might see. I've seen the name. It's
like
them,
BTF
right?
is Blue Backpack, or Blue
exactly.
Backpack is
BTF is Blue Backpack.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification. From the Steam description, they say that the Berlin Apartment, I guess it's described as, witness the turning points in the lives of the inhabitants of an apartment in Berlin over the course of a whole century. The gameplay of the Berlin Apartment is basically a first-person walking sim.
Mm-hmm.
You start the game playing in 2020 as a young child by the name of Dilara, who is helping her father, Malik, renovate an apartment. And through the course of the renovations, you find traces of past inhabitants, which leads you to playing through a brief snapshot of these past inhabitants' lives.
Correct.
Berlin Apartment was generally well received. It's currently sitting at a 77 on OpenCritic. It was mostly praised, I would say, for the human stories that they depict in the game.
Yes, rightly so.
We start out these conversations, Michael, by asking ourselves 3 questions. Where did you play the Berlin Apartment? About how long did it take you to beat? And what are some high-level thoughts you have about the game?
So, Marcus, I played it on PC. Why? Because I'm experimenting to record some of my play sessions. So my playtime, unfortunately, is not going to be reflective of the time, just because I did lots of tested recordings. I think I played about 8.5 hours on this game, Marcus, which was long.
Yeah.
But that was just because I redid chapters, or at least part of chapters, testing sound, testing the image quality and things like that. So I spent way more time on this game than if I would just do a plain through. But I'm hopefully, Marcus, we can here and there in our YouTube video or in some of the videos in the future capture a little bit of our gameplay. And so I was just experimenting with regards to how can we get it done. And so I'm just stretching my muscles and my skills as someone who creates content, if that makes sense, right? Top line thoughts. You mentioned already what this is. We witness various periods through the last 120 years. But the address of the apartment, and maybe if I were to give it an alternative title, let's say as well, the address remains the same, regardless of the history that happens.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a game that really hit me hard the longer I spent with it. Because you notice in the apartment the smallest of changes as history happens, right? And so the floor, the object on the shelf, specific furniture, if we see them through the small vignettes that we experience in the game, it's almost a little bit like the game that we played, Far Lone Sales, right? So within, it kind of looks familiar, even though we are at a different development stage as we collect things. But outside our vehicle, lots of changes are happening, and it's the same kind of idea here, right? So it's interesting with regards to how we experience the world once we look out the window. And I think that was the thing that really hit me the most. Yeah, there are no boss fights. There are no real puzzles.
No, not really. No.
But I think this game reminded me a little bit of Despelote because it captures a little bit of a time that was very precious, no, for the developer when we're looking at Despelote. But here, with regards to the apartment of Berlin, right? So Despelote, we see what happens in the city, and then the Berlin apartment, we basically see life in Berlin through the windows of the apartment, and I think that's what makes it quite poignant. Yeah, so these happenings are definitely things that I will not forget. Lessons in history, the history told through the common man or the common person, and that's what stays with me. Marcus, how was it for you?
Yeah, I played it on PlayStation. It's been a little while
Woohoo!
since I played a tiny game on PlayStation. So
Matt will
played
be
it on.
happy.
Matt will be. This is a PlayStation game, Matt. You could have joined us for this one. It took me. The PlayStation clock says 3 hours, but I don't think it's unable to indicate like how like uh, increments within between 3 and 4. So it's probably closer to 3.5, I think.
Okay.
High level thoughts. I liked this game. As you've said, and as reviewers have said about this game, this is tells some really poignant personal stories, kind of a day in the life of these individuals living in the apartment through some pretty significant, world events. We're going back through time. So I'm sure you can appreciate, we're not going to get into the details, but like, World War II and
Yep.
the Berlin Wall and, some other kind of like really kind of like important,
Developments.
important periods of time within Berlin. And so it's neat to get it from that individual perspective. I think Despelote is a really good comparison because it is that slice of life sort of situation, right? You're just getting
Totally right.
that day of an individual who happens to live in the apartment. So yeah, I enjoyed this game. I enjoyed it. It's not without its flaws, but I think like it is tells some pretty powerful stories. So that's
Absolutely
very cool. Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to start out by giving folks a brief reminder about how we talk about games on Tiny Game Chronicles. We like to identify 3 things that we think particularly stood out about a game, do a bit of a deeper dive discussion on each of those 3 things. And then we almost always, we're going to do so here, avoid spoilers on Tiny Game Chronicles. So we'll kind of tiptoe around the actual like story beats that happen within each of these vignettes. I don't think like this is a story game, so we don't want to ruin it for folks. So if you haven't played the Berlin Apartment, you are safe to listen to this episode. We will not be spoiling the story for you. Okay, Michael, let's get into our standout aspects of the Berlin Apartment. The first thing that we wanted to touch on, because obviously they've chosen to tell their story through vignettes. So the vignettes are, this vignette style presentation is a standout of the game. How did the vignette style of storytelling work for you?
It worked very well for me, Marcus, because I think it's an anthology. Maybe that's the best way that I can describe it. They're like short stories. You mentioned it already earlier. The fact that we're seeing a day in the life of
Yes.
different personalities living in the apartment. And our friend, we're going to refer to him a little bit later, but Christopher Lanoux, they mentioned that, and he's reviewed because he reviewed this game in so many games, the website. So he says it's kind of a thing that you wish every student could experience alongside their textbooks because it restores all the messy human detail that the summaries leave out. And so
Mm.
these are very human stories, that we are exposed to. And I think what I appreciated is the multi perspective that we get to what other historians would consider the truth. The fact that we have different protagonists in each era, and the game, I think, avoids giving us a single viewpoint with regards to how German history is being interpreted, and so there is a tone and flexibility that shifts. I would almost say that each vignette almost has like its own style, if it makes
Yeah,
sense, right?
I think so.
So,
Yep.
and I think that that was, I don't know, very representative of the era where the vignette comes from. And it's yeah, one of a better word, it's like almost you're playing a different genre of the game within each vignette, if that makes sense, right? Without breaking immersion. So it's not like all of a sudden you don't know where you are. So we have a little bit of a silent film aesthetic in one of the vignettes, without going into spoilers. A little bit of the childhood innocence, that perspective, some eccentricity, right, that we experience in the vignettes. And I think they all work together very well. They're well paced. Although I would have loved that so I played with keyboard and controller. So keyboard, a mouse and keyboard on the one side, and it was a very different playing experience than playing with a controller. So there are plus and minuses for both. We might get into that a little bit later. But I don't think that the game ever felt like, I don't know, I experienced fatigue or a disassociation from what I was being presented. Um, I would maybe, as the last point, say it's like snapshot storytelling.
Yes.
And by that I mean we get the day in the life, and it's a charged moment about that day, if that makes sense, right? And I don't think that you need to spend more time, because I think the spirit of what was happening was so well communicated through that vignette that you were experiencing, that I don't think we needed, I think, more of an exposure. But that's just my personal opinion, Marcus. You might have a different feeling about it. So I'm quite curious with regards to how you see that, whether that which they gave you was enough or whether you felt you needed more.
Well, my initial impression was I would have liked to have been able to spend a little bit more time with these
Hmm.
characters in these vignettes. The how should I frame this? I would say that the length of the vignettes in terms of like a game
Hmm.
is kind of perfect, right?
Yep.
Like they are
Tiny.
roughly, yeah, like maybe 45 minutes per
Yep.
vignette, somewhere in that
Yep.
neighborhood. So that's actually really, really good. But I was so engrossed in the stories, especially when I finished a vignette, I was like, oh, I would love to know a little bit more about what
Hmm.
happens to these characters. But after sitting with the game a little bit, finished the game a few days ago, I think it actually does a really good job at, again, giving you that snapshot of what's
Hmm.
happening to that individual in that day. Because
Yep.
and really mostly only in a few hours. Like it's not
Correct.
even a full day's time that you're
Yeah.
experiencing, but it's able to, which we'll probably get into in another, but like convey a lot of detail and context for what's happening through details in the apartment, little, bits of dialogue here and there. So I think
Hmm.
it actually is, my initial impression was that maybe wasn't, I would have liked to have been a little bit more to the
Hmm.
vignettes, but I
Hmm.
think in retrospect, it actually works incredibly well. I've kind of settled that the vignette style presentation and the length of the vignettes worked really well. Maybe one quibble that I had is I feel like the devs felt like they needed a mechanism in which to unite all of the vignettes by having somebody kind of in present day.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that always worked well, kind of like
I'm with
having
you.
to reflect. It almost felt a little forced to
Yeah.
kind of spur on, the next vignette. Like it was almost like too cute in a sense. Does that make sense? Like
The
how
lightheartedness that was present was in stark contrast with, I don't know, the depths of the vignette, right?
not only the tone, although I would agree with
Okay.
that, but it just almost like the mechanism in which they chose
I'm with you.
for, the events that were happening in present day to lead to the player experiencing the first vignette versus, and then the second vignette. It felt maybe a little convenient.
Artificial to a certain
Artificial,
extent.
a little artificial, exactly.
Yeah.
Not that that's a huge
Mm.
more a quibble than anything else, but I think that the vignettes themselves I've settled on very good length, very good way to kind of like tell a lot by only showing a little. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think just to add there, the ending of a vignette never satisfied you with regards to being able to answer all the questions that you had. And if both of us are very curious people, and because we are engaged, right, with the protagonist, we want to know
what happens next.
What happens next?
What
exactly.
happens next? Yeah. And so they did that. I mean, I guess that's, I'd rather. There's something about wanting your audience, the player in this particular, left wanting more. That's better than necessarily like giving them too much. So if you're going to err some way, you want to have them leaving more. But I can think of like, I want to know what happened the immediate like hours after those each vignette ended, right?
Yes. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
Let's move on to standout item number 2, Michael. And I think we would be remiss to not include the apartment as a standout of this game. Like there are so many details. We are jumping back through these vignettes into different periods of time. So like you start out, I think it's 2020 that you start out as, and you go back to, was it 1989? So kind of, shortly before the Berlin Wall came down.
Exactly.
And you go back to 1933. So prior to World War II, you go to 1945 in one vignette, and then the 60s. I think it's 1967.
1967, the year before I was born.
The year before Michael was born, yes. And so, like, but you're getting a real sense of these different time periods by just walking around the apartment space, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that the apartment for me is almost symbolically an anchor where all those stories, all these narrations, these characters, these protagonists that we are exposed to live, right? Leave or die. As you say, nobody lives 120 years, right? And you start to recognize that there are similar familiar elements in the apartment, right? Be it, I don't know, some of the furniture that is there that you recognize, the phone, no, that you recognize wherever the phone is, as an example, is one of.
Yeah, but different. The phone at different time periods looks like a phone from that time period, right? Like
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And as Christopher pointed out, it's incredibly impactful to see the very same place by the scenery of these very different eras, right? With the way that the apartment, if you just compare what it looked like in 1933, which is the earliest I think that we discover what the apartment looks like to 1989, right? The apartment always felt like whatever was happening within was in transition. So the apartment was stable, but there were always boxes around, right? With either things half unpacked
Right. Yeah, I
or
hadn't thought of
half
that
packed,
actually. Yeah.
right? So if you think about it, right? So, um, and for me, um, I think one of the key points was, and you know that I'm a big Uncharted fan. You could also say I'm a big Tomb Raider fan, and so I had through the renovation that we experienced in the apartment. We had a lot of excavation where some of the wallpapers were taken down, things were discovered from the previous owners. And for me, it was almost like, I don't know, an act of archaeology, right? Because these vignettes, right, are shown to us, or we discover things about the apartment from the previous inhabitants. And so you realize that there's a lot of history layered on the walls of the apartment that kind of remind us how old this apartment actually is, and it's almost like a time capsule, right?
It really is.
It's
Yeah.
so for me that was like, wow, yeah, that kind of hit, and this kind of object permanence, if that makes sense. So it's kind of ground in its story. So the kind of the feeling that, you know, the people that live in these apartments are all fragile and temporary, but they leave material places and traces behind that are stubborn and that you know, are still present regardless of how much time has passed. So these objects kind of tell a story, and so there's a link between 1933 and 1989, right?
Totally.
So yeah,
Well,
Marcus.
we had done some renovations. So we've been in our current house for, I don't know, about 7 years now, and we
Mm,
had done, you know, a few renovations for fairly early on, and the renovators pulled out like newspaper that was stuffed in the walls
yeah,
as like insulation. And like,
well,
so
it's
this, our
crazy.
house was built in 1944, I think. So
Wow,
like there are literally like news articles that refer to World War II, like kind of towards the end of World War II.
that's amazing.
It's amazing. And so it's that's a kind of what is happening like
Yeah,
literally in this game is like
yeah,
these renovators are contractors are doing some renovations and they're finding bits and pieces. And so like for me, like in real life, you're thinking back to like, oh man, what was it like to have lived in this house when it, you know, the first owners of this house, you know,
yep,
what were they doing? You know, what lives were they living? To get a snapshot of that, you know, that life,
yeah,
that day, a
exactly.
day in that life would be so cool to be able to experience. And that's what you're kind of doing here. And so like, I think the apartment itself is such a I don't know, main character is the
Yep.
main character of the
It
game,
is
right?
100% right. I think you hit it on the head. It is the main character, and you're experiencing. That's why go look out the windows, right? Go have a look what the world looks like, because
Yes.
the apartment is the stability, is the anchor in there. But the world around you changes so much, so drastically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
almost
I
like
often
a
think about like what it looked like out the front window of my
yeah,
house when there's
yeah,
this like what did the street look like? Well, who was, you know, and
yeah.
that's what we're getting in this game. It's really neat. The I think like one of the other aspects, this is a walking sim through and through.
Mm,
You know, there's it's pretty gameplay light, but I think like I know we maybe differ a little bit on this, but I think that the gameplay that was involved in this and being able to interact with certain items, have conversations with maybe our animals or our pets and
yeah.
things like that. You know, I think it was enough gameplay to keep me satiated and keep
Mm,
things moving along. I liked it, and you know there were, you know, they do a few um I don't know, little techniques about different types of button presses and
mm,
inputs to interact with all of this incredible amount of detail that is present
yes.
within the apartment.
Yes, totally, totally with you, Marcus.
Yeah.
And that's where it was different for me. So some of the interaction was easier with keyboard and mouse to interact, but for the
Hmm.
walking, I preferred the controller,
Right.
if that
Right.
makes sense. No, so that was perhaps where I would say, hey, if you can use both, then that's great, because I found the interaction with the controller a little bit clumsy. But I know the game is not there to, I don't know, to you're not you're not playing this game for the gameplay.
No,
You're
no.
playing it for the
Yeah,
narrative and the story, and I
sure.
think that's yeah, we got to be true to that, right? So yeah.
Okay, Michael, let's move on to standout item number 3. And I think like this game is very political, and it
Oh,
talks, there's lots of different themes. And
yeah.
one of those themes, which I know you were keen to get into a little bit more, is this theme of forced displacement. And we're going to tiptoe around spoilers, but like, what is it that you wanted to talk about in terms of forced displacement theme of the
Yeah,
game?
because we experience each vignette, so each of the protagonists going through some sort of trauma per se, right? Some sort of inner turmoil, even though it's only short and it's only a day in the life of. But we get a good idea with regards to what was the central nervous systems of Berlin, right? Through the eyes of the protagonist, what was the zeitgeist like, right? And so for me, there were like three thoughts that came out of just reflecting this, also just considering my journey through many continents of the world and returning to Germany, and me being half German from my mum's side is the question of, who counts as being German. Because we meet the protagonists, they all have history. I think only one of the protagonists is maybe purely German, but the rest definitely isn't. They have an immigration story behind them, and so the game's has some very powerful ideas that the residents that you meet across the decades, they all speak German. They all live in a German city. They think of the apartment as a home, yet each of them has different points as told in the story or by their neighbors, whether they belong or don't belong. So it's almost like the environment is telling you, yes, you fit here, or no, you don't. And for those of you who know a little bit of German history, this is not just physical outward displacement. This game definitely has um, an element where you might feel internally displaced by the environment dictating to you whether you fit or you don't fit. And I think that is quite strong, right? You can feel displaced without leaving, without
Yeah,
packing, if that
yeah,
makes sense, right? And I think this is what the game gets across very, very well. So there's almost like an internal exile that can happen in a system within a society. But Marcus, the other thing is the other side of the coin is in a lot of these vignettes, we play through some mini games per se, but we go through the mechanics of leaving, if that makes sense, right? To a certain extent, because we always encounter the apartment with boxes.
mhm,
And if we think of one specific vignette, it's about packing and leaving. And if we think of how the story wraps up, it's about throwing things away that are still packed, right?
yeah,
That are of no use or no value to the specific zeitgeist anymore. Um, However, these kind of what we consider mundane tasks through different points in history, um, they're almost like rituals of loss. If we start packing things and throwing them down a chute, if that
right.
if that makes sense, right? So for me, it's yeah, it's those little moments that really speak about the grander topic. Even thinking of today, that the role that Germany plays with regards to the refugees, right? With regards to how many Ukrainians live in Berlin, how many people from the Middle East, from Turkey, they're all displaced, and Berlin is almost like a hotspot to pick up and give hope and give a future. At least externally, this is what people profess verbally. but whether people truly feel like they belong. I think that is a very personal question and a much deeper question. And that's why the aspect of displacement in the context of Berlin, in this apartment, came up for me. I'll
Yeah, and
leave it at that.
I would say I like that you identified that it's not just like this external forced
Yep.
displacement, but there is a lot of internal. So and either way, it can be pretty traumatic, a
Yep.
traumatic experience for our characters, right? And again, this this story or this game is taking place. These vignettes are taking place over some pretty charged
Yep.
moments in German history, in
History.
Berlin's history.
Yep.
So you can appreciate that um, these characters are experiencing something that could be traumatic, whether it's literally because they may be displaced or like being forcibly displaced, or if it's more just a lack of feeling of belongingness that they might
Yep.
have for whatever reason, right? It's
And I think
definitely
both
a
count.
through
No,
line.
both
You both
both
count.
count. Yeah.
Both
So,
count. Yeah.
and it's interesting. If I can just say, so my mum has an extended family here. She has like all in all 8 sisters. One of which is still surviving here, and she was born in 1937. And she
Okay.
tells me of what it was like as a young child, as a 4 or 5 year old. She still has memories of what it was like in 1945,
Yeah.
right? And the way that against in every living room there needed to be a picture of Hitler,
Mm,
and they need to kind of say a prayer in the mornings with regards to thanking Hitler for the food that they have on the table and things like
wow.
that. So it's for us sounds totally crazy, but that was
Yeah.
almost like the normality, right, with regards to how people kind of started their day. And if you play this game and reflect on what were the stories that you heard from people that actually lived and experienced the day by day of what it was like living in Germany, hey man, then this game hits home in a very different way.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
For
yeah.
sure.
Mm.
Okay, Michael, we did get a write-in from our
Yes,
community standouts. So, Topher, aforementioned Topher, wrote
yes.
in their standouts for the game. They happen to also review it on so many games. So definitely go check out their review. Michael has linked it in our Discord if you happen to be in there. But anyways, Topher says, talking of standouts, I'm just impressed by how the devs focused on the small moments of life hidden beneath these major events.
Mhm.
The writing is really strong in all the segments, and the game really makes it clear how life is in constant flux, that nothing as it is now will remain forever.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think
Touching.
that's nicely summarized
Absolutely.
by Topher.
It's a beautiful article, definitely well worth the read. And yeah, I also picked up some inspiration with regards to my thoughts as I went through this game.
Yeah.
Thank you, Topher.
Yes. Uh, Michael, we end these things by asking ourselves, do we recommend the game? And if so, to whom? You want to get us started?
Yeah, I'll get you started. Definitely. So a big yes from my side. So if you're interested in history, I think history enthusiasts, seeking to maybe hear it from the story from the ground roots levels, not by the victor, right, with regards to um, what happened, what the history books say, or what the politicians say, what the historians say, what academia says. I think this is another way to. I mean, these stories are, as I said, fictional stories, but I think that the sentiment and the zeitgeist that people were experiencing, I think, hit pretty close to home. Yeah, so definitely worth a playthrough. Fans who love walking simulators and narrative games, definitely yes. I think that educators and students per se should also play this game because I think it has a very, very strong message. And it's not something that you will find in the textbooks, at least not in the way that empathy perhaps can be imparted, if that makes sense. Anyone interested in migration or displacement? This is a good game to kind of get that message across. And it's not a game it's not for players if you're looking for, I don't know, some sort of mechanical depth or puzzles, or it's not a fast-paced game. So if you're looking for something like that, this is definitely a very slow, meditative experience. Then this is for you.
Yeah.
Marcus, what about you?
Yeah, I'd pretty much agree with all of that. Like if you are super anti walking sim
Mm,
gameplay, then you may not be able to get past that to be able to appreciate or to enjoy the stories that are presented here.
yeah.
But outside of that, if you're a fan of history, if you want to experience some pretty poignant stories about individuals, a day in the life of. A couple of these
Mm,
were a real gut punch, Michael.
totally.
Like I had to put the controller down kind of at the end
Mm,
of the vignette and just sit
mm,
down and think about it. And
mm,
this is one I was telling Lindsay about. I was like, I had to describe kind of what happened at the end of one of these vignettes because it was
mm.
like, wow, that is powerful. So, pretty strong recommendation for me. Again, pretty short. It is a little on the pricey side. Most of the games we play
Yes,
here are quite cheap, and Canadian dollars. I don't know what it works out to in American. Probably 25. It was 33 Canadian dollars. So that
that's
is a
25
little
euros. Yeah.
25 euros. So a little pricier than the games that we typically play on the show. I'd still say it's worth it, but it is on the pricier side. So just be aware of
Yeah,
that.
I would also say that if price is an issue, put it on your wish list.
Yep.
Wait until it's on sale. Is if it? Oh gosh, I'll repeat that. Put it on your wish list. Wait until it is on sale, and then it's definitely worthwhile playing. But yeah, considering that we can get Expedition 33 at $49, this game at 25 isn't really a bargain. But I
Yeah.
think it's an important message, right? That needs to be promoted. And I think there's a lot of education work, and this is why this game is important, right?
Yeah, I would agree. Okay, Michael, that's it for episode 33. We
Woohoo!
finish these things off by doing a little bit of housekeeping. Of
Yes.
course, we would really appreciate it if you shared, liked, subscribed, and left us a 5-star review wherever you happen to be listening. Aside from that, you can follow the show on Blue Sky at Tiny Game Chronicles. You can follow me on Blue Sky at Marcus O'Neill 79. You can also find me on my two other podcasts. Hype Factor is a fantasy critic podcast that I do with my good friend John. It's a monthly show. Fantasy Critic season is about to get into full swing. So if you play Fantasy Critic, I'd encourage you to check it out because we offer lots of tips and tricks to kind of help you win your league. And then my other show that I do is called Brothers from Another Mothership with four of our good friends, Michael, Matt, Quag, and Ron. And this is also a monthly show, and we mostly just argue about video games. So if that sounds interesting, you can check that one out too. Michael, where can people find you?
You can also find me on Blue Sky under Drellish, DRELLESH, as well as on our Discord community. Link will be in the show notes, and I look forward to welcoming you into this tiny community. We have only a few channels, but we want to really champion the art of short form gaming. So if you have anything to contribute, please hop onto this channel and help us also make this mission that we have, this vision of we have, make that a success. So you are extremely welcome. It's a very wholesome community.
Yeah, you bet. And share your tiny game recommendations. I think we haven't
Yes,
mentioned that on our shows, but we love getting tiny game recommendations. And a lot of the games that we end up playing on the show are because they were recommended by the community. So if you have
correct.
some games, hop into the Discord, recommend them, or catch us on social media and do the same. We also have a YouTube channel, Michael. You mentioned
Yes,
it already. We may be trying to figure out a way to upload some additional content on there, but our episodes, for the most part, will be on there. We do some shorts, try to do 1 or 2 per episode. So if that sounds interesting, you want to see our handsome faces, you can see us on YouTube. So subscribe over there.
absolutely. Uncut versions,
Uncut,
right?
uncut. Yeah, mostly uncut. And the last thing we need to do, Michael, is introduce our next game. So this game was developed by an individual named Friedemann. They have 2 other previous games on Steam, much lower profile. This is a retro mini roguelike inside a slot machine. And the name of this game, Michael, is
Slots and Daggers.
Slots and Daggers. So I know you had played this shortly after it came out. I'm not what put this on your radar initially.
I think just because of its uniqueness. I did not expect an indie game focusing on this genre. It's a genre, Marcus, that we also have not played before. And I think the mixture of RPG and slots for me, because, wherever I see those 3 RPG letters, that's where my heart goes to. I tend to immediately gravitate towards those type of games. It was just really curiosity. And yeah, I think it's a great one to start the year because, playing those type of games, at least it's a game of chance, and we always need luck. And for 2026, we want luck for everyone, and so this is the great ideal game to start the year.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So you haven't finished it though.
I have not finished it. No,
so you put in some time. You've enjoyed what you've played so far. I have not started. I just purchased it last night, I think. So
okay.
So yeah, if you're interested in jumping into Slots and Daggers with us, and being able to leave your standouts in our Discord so that we can read them on the show, that would be great. We'd love to have you play it with us.
Absolutely. And you can play it with a controller. That's the first thing that I asked Marcus. So
yes, Steam Deck verified. So
very good.
Yeah. No keyboard and mouse for this one, Michael.
Nice.
Okay, Michael, I guess we can just wrap things up and say to everybody, thank you for listening. Happy New Year to all.
Happy New Year.
And we will be back in 2 weeks with Slots and Daggers.
See you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.